Amid all the talk of optimism coming out of Mar-a-Lago, where President Trump met with President Zelensky, and a lot of the European leaders say that they're on board and they're 90% of the way to a ceasefire and a peaceful settlement. Don't believe it, because actually the Russians, who also have to be on board with all of this, it's not just the Western side, are saying anything except for they're looking for a way out or any kind of a negotiated settlement that is not to their favor. And in fact, they're issuing something close to being a demand: get out of the Donbas, or it's going to be game on even more. I mean, I'm kind of interpreting that a little bit, but that's how I'm reading it. But we're going to bring on somebody today who knows a lot more about the Russian side than I do, and that is Andrei Martyanov, who is a veteran author and Russian military expert, host of the YouTube channel Smoothie X12. Andrei, as always, a pleasure to have you on board today.
My pleasure.
Well, listen, I'm especially glad to have you today. It seems like every time you come on, there's something that's been going on that we really look for your expertise on the Russian side.
RT already jumped on me, and they said you just cannot, get away without, out of this. And so, yeah.
Well, see, one of the reasons why we're grateful to have you on the show is because there's almost no Russian voices at all on the mainstream media in the West at all, Europe or the United States. And that gives a very skewed vision to people in the West to understand what's going on. You have to hear what Zelensky's saying, what the Europeans are saying, what the Americans are saying, and what the Russians are saying. You have to hear all of that to be able to understand the complexity of this. And of course, as we always go back to, everything hinges on the reality on the battlefield. And that's where we're going to spend our time today, so people get a truth understanding of what's really going on. So we talked earlier today about the European side of this, what they're saying, what the Zelensky, of course, is saying about Putin. I'm sorry, Trump. But I want to go on today and look at what Russia is saying. So first of all, I want to go back a couple of days where Putin was seeming to be a lot more, even more confident than he has been. And one of the reasons he specified was because of the pace of combat operations.
Но сегодня, судя по вашим докладам, судя по темпам, которые мы наблюдаем на линии боевого соприкосновения, наша заинтересованность в выводе украинских воинских формирований из занимаемых ими пока территорий фактически сводится к нулю. По разным совершенно соображениям. И если киевские власти не желают закончить дело миром, мы решим все стоящие перед нами задачи в ходе специальной военной операции вооруженным путем.
Now, I have been waiting for you to come on because I'm especially interested in your interpretation of this. We can read the translation, but I want to know the interpretation, because when he says our interest in the Ukrainian armed forces withdrawal from areas that that the Russian side has annexed is close to zero, and then that if they don't want peaceful settlement, then we will take it by force. To my ears, that seems the most direct, which is Putin oftentimes kind of is soft about his comments. That seems a lot more firm and direct than normal. And first of all, let's ask, what do you interpret that to mean by our interest is almost at zero, and even talking about a withdrawal from the Ukraine side?
Well, this visit to the command post of the basically special military operation, especially in the presence of people like Gerasimov, obviously, and others, he knows what he's talking about. It's staged for the public. So what he says there, it's obviously public PR thing, because most of those meetings are highly classified. They happen behind the closed doors. But yeah, he basically stated what everybody knew for a number of months for now. And the issue here is, let me put it this way. It's not even Krasnoarmeysk, it's not even Kupiansk, which Russians control fully, and this old propaganda, which is nothing more by lies, being, well, essentially spewed by the mass media. But reality is, Gulyai-Polye, it took very little time for Russians to break through Gulyai-Polye, and this morning, Lieutenant General Teplinsky, commander of their Army Group Dnieper, reported that Russians are already 15 kilometers from the outskirts of Zaporozhye. So, as you can see yourself, this is the collapse of the front, which everybody were talking about. And Vladimir Putin also uses this term, which is the breakthrough. And the breaking through is happening all over the place. In Sumy, there is a dramatic movement towards Sumy. And so, what can I say? It will continue and will only accelerate, because essentially what happened, it was depleted. And now, you know what, all those forces which NATO was thinking that they can withstand Russian assault, they are collapsing because, well, what can I say? Classic strategy. And now with the situation which happened this morning, or yesterday rather, when Putin informed Trump about the attacks on his one of his residences in Novgorod area, Russia has casus belli, and she can go now after number of people there, which before that Russians were trying not to touch. And reaction of Trump, I can tell you one thing. I think it's highly probable now, to state that it is highly probable that a certain degree of coordination between Trump and Russia and Putin exists. And one of the reasons being, of course, yesterday when this joint press conference with Zelensky, who obviously playing all kinds of the idiotic things there, is that Trump stated what Russia stated all along, that no ceasefire, you know, as Europeans and Ukraine wants. This is not going to fly. It's going to be the fundamental, decision which will address root causes of the whole situation. And that was rather okay. So this is interesting. They are beginning to sing from the same, basically, music sheet, if you wish. And that's exactly what is happening. And in terms of military, we discussed it many times. They were defeated. It's just a matter of time how Russians want to approach it in order not to create more casualties for themselves, because they're it's an economy of force movements, and there is no need to conduct this gigantic, Red Arrow, deep operation, offensives, when you can do it at the broad front, moving across the whole, front line, and essentially, creating this buffer zone. And that's what is happening. And now, obviously, after this situation with attempt of attack, all 91 drones have been shut down. It's just that now Vladimir Putin, or collective Putin, if you wish, has the casus belli for the great intensification of the turning Ukraine or bombing it into the Stone Age. And that is going to happen.
And you say that's going to happen. And what is the timing that you think that's going to happen? Is that something that's going to come soon? Is it going to be something out of the ordinary? Is there going to, because obviously there's been a lot of these big bomb blasts going on throughout Ukraine on almost a daily basis.
Yeah, it will intensify, but we know that it is now confirmed, including by people from the Ukrenergo. This is the organization of which is responsible for the power generation in Ukraine, that in Kiev alone, up to 75% of the electric capacity for power generations have been destroyed. So it's going to be destroyed now for 100%. And you don't attack Russian president. And they have to pray to God that Russians won't use that and won't flatten the Kiev, the center of the Kiev, together with all those bunkers and government buildings, where all those guys from CIA, MI6 sit. Many people don't understand. Russians know their names, they know their addresses, they know who they are, and they know where they reside. So they can do that, but probably the Mr. Budanov will be hunted down and killed, maybe with his family. I don't know. It's this is a serious thing. And if anybody thought that it was a joke, now you can see yourself by these actions of Ukrainian, whatever the forces, terrorist organization, essentially, with the support of the curators from the West. well, the response will be appropriate, and we'll see. But I can tell you one thing: Ukraine is not going to be industrial country no matter what. It's going to be reduced to agrarian territory, and that's already have been decided. But now it's going to be, you know what? I don't know how long the campaign will last, but yeah, it's every day now. So Russia produces enormous quantities of their both standoff weapons and all kinds of them, from missiles to UAVs, including all kinds of the newer types. So she can deliver the strikes every day for unlimited duration of time. So yeah.
So going back to that video clip I showed just a second ago of Vladimir Putin wearing his military uniform, making that statement, it in the past, and this is going back to June 2024, as well as even earlier this summer, he was still saying, I remember specifically when he was in Beijing and he made a comment there. He had a big press conference afterwards, and he said, you know, we're still interested in a diplomatic solution, and if we can accomplish our objectives that way, great. If not, we'll use military force. This time, he said, our interest is close to zero about Ukraine withdrawing. Now that's poignant right now, because one of the issues of discussion with President Trump and also with Europe is, would Ukraine withdraw willingly from the Donbas and Zaporizhia and Kherson as well? And now it's sounding to me like, and this is what I need your interpretation on, it sounds like Putin's going, yeah, I don't care what you think anymore. I'm not even worried about that now. Is that, because that's different?
Absolutely, that's what it is. And again, absolutely, you are 100% correct. I mean, Russians don't care anymore. And it has to be understood within the framework of also the cultural issue between Russians and Ukrainians, that Russians don't want to see Ukrainians. They don't view them as brotherly people. They understand the gravity of the treason which have been committed. And in this case, basically the task of Russian armed forces is to finish off whatever is remaining of this now they don't even call it armed forces of Ukraine. They call it a terrorist organization, which essentially it is. And it will be finished off physically. It will be annihilated. And that's what is happening right now, even when we speak with you. So after that, I mean, Russia will decide what to do with what will be remaining of Ukraine.
So, but that's a little bit more meaningful than I think even people recognize, because if that's the case, that Russia now doesn't care about whether they do or don't withdraw from the Donbas, then that also implies that they being Russia is not even worried about diplomacy at all, and now they're just focused on taking militarily. Is that the case, or are they still willing?
Yeah, it is the case. I mean, it's they still have this kind of portion of this consideration that okay, if it goes diplomatically, it's fine, but it is clear, it has to be understood from the start. Russians, one of the major political objectives of Russia for Ukraine is, of course, the removal of Zelensky and denazification. Regime has to go. The whole regime. It doesn't matter who they put it. Now they talks about Zaluzhny. Zaluzhny is butcher. He's moron. So he is the same Nazi as all those people who surround Zelensky. So it doesn't matter. Regime has to go. There will be new government in Ukraine, whatever will be left of it, and this government will be controlled by Russia, no matter what Europeans say. Period. Trump understood this. And as I already stated, there are reasons to believe that there is a certain degree of coordination between Washington and Moscow, because obviously, as I repeat ad nauseam, I have a blister on my tongue, Russia will talk to Washington because it's inevitable. Two superpowers must communicate. Russians will not talk to Europe. Russians don't care what Europe thinks about it. Russians hate Europe.
I want to get to that point in just a second about talking to Trump, because I think that message is partially getting through, and I think part of that was revealed in a certain answer that Trump gave. But before I get to that, I want to stick on your previous comment there about Europe and doesn't care what Europe. Part of the real huge problem, in my estimation, with Europe and the public understanding of things is because the elite, I don't know if it's intentional misinformation or a grotesque lack of understanding. It could be either is possible. I want to show you this clip from Times of London, to where they were asking, in light of all of these conversations been happening in Mar-a-Lago, about what Russia would do. And instead of what you just described, which is a powerful Russia about to conclude that there's no more worry about diplomacy and it's just going to be a military conquest, here's what they think about military conquest.
Dan, I'm not sure we have that clip.
The one we just played, the one you don't have it anymore.
The one where he says that
give
Russia will provide energy for on the cheap.
No. This is I'm sorry. I'm looking for the one by the Times of London.
No, I don't have that.
Oh, give me the gist. Listen, the point is, I can even forestall it. Anything emanating, first, United Kingdom doesn't have serious media. All of them, they are garbage, okay? Including Times of London, including Financial Times. It's a bunch of cretins who do not understand the first thing about anything, because if you look attentively at the level of their military intelligence circuit, if you wish, their armed forces, I joke, their military academies, I joke, the professors who teach there, I joke, Chatham House is a joke. They're all joke. They don't have non-tabloid media. Sadly, United States is going there the same way, but at least United States has a powerful alternative media circuit like we are talking about, talking with you right now. But no matter what they think, nobody cares. They are unprofessional, uncultured people. Their military, their staffs, headquarters in Brussels, they do not understand warfare. The average company commander of Russian armed forces today, let alone battalion commander or chief of staff of battalion, they can come to King's College or their general staff college and make their professors and their generals look like imbeciles, which they are. We saw this ourselves, what those people live. They live in an alternative universe. They do not understand the realities of modern warfare. They don't have technology. They are really backward. If it's very difficult to explain to people how backward militarily Germany, France, with the exception of their nuclear deterrent, or United Kingdom are. They are backward. They have their table of organization and equipment from 1990s. Their air defense systems, their missile systems, it's all from 1990s. Those people have no concept of the modern operations. They have no concept about the fire impact and how for example, recon fire and recon strike complexes work. They just don't. They don't know nothing about Russia, because there are no serious Russia experts in any way, including in the United States. I read yesterday Anna Matveeva from, again, guess what? They have this, Soros-funded Quincy Institute with Andrew Basevich. She is she was in Chatham House. She was the lady. She's PhD. I mean, she has no clue what she's talking about. It's like you look at this, it's just unbelievable. And so, whatever they think, it doesn't matter.
This well, it doesn't matter in terms of the reality, but it does matter in terms of public understanding. And this particularly was a British expert. His name was Lee Turner, and he went on Times of London today, and he says, well, I think that the issue is when talking about what Russia wouldn't accept. He says, I think Putin is confused. He said this with a straight face. I think Putin is confused because he doesn't understand that he can't win the war, and that actually, and I'm not making this up, he said, actually, Ukraine militarily is doing pretty well. That's what's passing for elite thinking in the West today. And so when people hear that kind of stuff, that's the only thing they hear because they don't hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, Europeans are brainwashed.
They'll be shocked.
Yeah, majority of Europeans are brainwashed. And they again, as I already stated, you look at the whole military of United Kingdom and their military propaganda media complex. They are morons, yeah. They are cretins, basically, So you cannot prepare modern officer corps, for example, the way the system of the preparation or training exists in the United Kingdom. It's for the Third World Army. And what can I say? If not for the United States, which gives them 1, 2, or 4 Trident missiles in, to load it into one of their still going to see Vanguard class strategic missile submarines, they are third world. And that's what many people do not understand. They are third world now, not only in terms of military, they are third world as a civilization, as the economy. They are non-productive economy, bar a few things like Rolls-Royce here and there. They cannot build anything which works, actually. And so as the result, you have those people, they are brainwashed. It is a result of the decades of the degeneration of the essentially degree mills. They don't have serious university. They don't have serious scholars. They have nothing. And that's the whole point. They still believe that they can fight. They don't understand.
And that extends beyond just some of the pundits and some of the so-called experts. That also, and that has direct relevance on how this war is or is not going to get ended by negotiations. And that starts with, at the top, with Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, one of the other questions that he was asked this weekend, which came up during the conversations, was about the withdrawal. I mentioned a second ago, Putin says, I'm not even interested in where they are. Well, other people are still interested. And most of the West is thinking, okay, well, for sure the Donbas, right? That's what you're going to have to withdraw from. Apparently, Trump is on board with that. The real question is, so they think, Zaporizhia and Kherson. I'm going to get to each of these in order. First of all, on Fox News last night, Brett Baier interviewed Zelensky and asked him point blank about Donbas.
They're tired. Are they ready for a deal?
People want peace. 87% support peace. At the same time, 85% against to withdraw from East. From the Donbas. It's meant that everybody wants peace, but just peace.
Just peace. We want just peace, a righteous peace, not just a give them away Donbas peace. That won't bring peace, so he says. Do they have the choice?
No, that's what I'm stating since 2023. And they have to pray to Lord that Vladimir Putin is a patient man and very calculating, and the same goes for the Russian Security Council, that after 2023, they have no options. It's just that the Russians were, because of the issue, what was happening on the front line, they were patient and were saying, you know what, do you want to stop bloodshed? No. Okay. Do you want to stop bloodshed? Again, no. And it all was connected to, obviously, Biden administration and Europeans. Europe is irrelevant. Most important, the tectonic shift had happened in Russian psyche. Russians view not just Europe, but also Europeans with contempt. They do not want to deal with them. In fact, many hate Europe outright. Because yesterday, Vladimir Putin signed the executive decree, which is now becoming a law. On the 19th of April, there will be commemoration of the victims of the genocide of the Soviet people by the same Europeans in World War II. It is especially after the siege of Leningrad. And so this is critical. And that was being pushed for a long time now by majority of the Russian, NGOs and, all kinds of other think tanks. And now it is official law. The break with Europe is complete. The Europe must die as it exists today. And this is by EU, by design. As I already stated, Russia will continue to talk with the United States because superpowers live in their own, framework, their own paradigm. They move differently. Evidently, Trump begins to understand this a little bit, especially considering the fact of the, situation with and what is happening inside the United States. But Europe is done. It's simple as that. So nobody cares what they want. If they, as Lavrov stated, first, their troops are a joke, okay? And military Russians know that. But if they want to collect troops and go and fight Russia, sure. See how fast their military political top will be annihilated. It will be less than 24 hours.
Yeah, and I made a comment that early in a show earlier today, no matter what is being talked about security guarantees in the West, nobody, no matter what they may say in public, is stupid enough, even these kinds of leaders in Europe, stupid enough to say, I'm going to send my troops to start a war with Russia that's going to get our people killed and our country attacked. Nobody's going to do that because they know they're not going to succeed. They're just going to talk that game.
Yeah,
but
that's the one thing.
Back into the same category and staying in it of, if you don't listen to the other side, you are going to be really shocked. So You just told me about what the situation really is with the Donbas. And President Putin has said that many times. He also said something else today about the other area that nobody has been talking about. I have not seen a single headline on this. And to me, this is a really important additional statement, more clarifying statement that should be acknowledged. And I wonder if you talk a little bit about it. And Putin was talking not just about the Donbas area, but about Zaporizhia.
I would like in this part of our meeting to say that both the liberation of Dimitrov and the liberation of the city of Gulyai-Pole are important results of combat work. Well, as for Dimitrov, this is a serious step toward the complete liberation of the Donetsk People's Republic. Gulyai-Pole is the second largest city of the Zaporozhye region, and after its liberation, good prospects open up for the development of the offensive in the Zaporozhye region.
This tails, in my view, off of what he said in that first clip there about, I don't care about them withdrawing anymore. He's now talking in direct, open sense, in a military context, the offensive in Zaporizhia, meaning I'm not worried about whether you withdraw. We're just going to take it. How do you read that?
Yeah, that's exactly what is happening. Russians are advancing. As I already stated, Colonel General Teplinsky already reported to Putin today in the morning, 15 kilometers from the outskirts of Zaporizhia already. So they lost Gulyai-Pole. Everybody said, oh, yeah, that's going to be another protracted, siege. No, Gulyai-Pole was taken within a week or so, And so now if that means that Zaporizhia will be blockaded, if you wish. And after that, you know what, Russians will take it. And that will continue until somebody says stop in terms of we surrender and we give you what you need. Russians are not interested in taking on their basically neck bunch of the freeloaders which are remaining, whatever they're remaining there in the rest of Ukraine, about maybe 19 million people. And but while doing this, Russia will do what I proposed since the start of a special military operation: physical annihilation of the whatever the armed forces of Ukraine represent out of themselves. There's a lot of volunteers which are being killed and taken prisoners. Just Colombians alone, my God, they at least when you read there's a lot of names there. So, and what can I say? That's simple as that. And then, of course, Kherson, and they have been evacuating Kherson, Ukrainians. But there is no need to rush. There is always time. That's the whole thing. That's what.
Well, and one might argue that the time is getting shorter than it was. And at the beginning of this first soundbite I put from Putin, he talked about one of the specific things that he mentioned about there, what led him to those statements about I don't care about them withdrawing anymore, is because he said of the pace of operations. That was quantified, I think it was this morning, or maybe it was yesterday, by Chief of Staff Gerasimov talking about quantifying how that pace has increased.
Are we waiting for clip?
We are.
Oh, okay.
Comrade Commander, the forces of the Joint Group are conducting an offensive along virtually the entire front. The formation and military units are successfully advancing deep into the enemy's defenses, inflicting losses. In December, we have already liberated over 700 square kilometers of territory and 32 settlements, which is the highest monthly advance of the entire outgoing year. In total, 6,640 square kilometers of territory and 334 settlements have come under our control this year. The enemy is not undertaking any active offensive actions. They have focused their efforts on strengthening their defenses and are attempting to slow the pace of our advance by conducting counterattacks in isolated areas and using drones extensively. Force Group North continues to expand its security.
That's probably good enough right there, Gary. That's the key issue that we were looking for right there, is that this month has been the fastest pace of the entire year. Obviously, there's still a few days left in December. It had already over 700 square kilometers, 6,600 square kilometers in the year alone. So while Russia is constantly mocked as only having taken 1% in a year, 6,000 square kilometers in the year, and then now a faster pace at the end. You mentioned at the top of this show that Russia could literally deindustrialize or de-electrify Ukraine in the main cities anyway, possibly next month in January at the worst time of the winter. What does that tell you about what you'd expect in the early part of 2026 militarily?
I mean, the increased operational tempo, obviously, it's just a matter of where Russia will decide to stop. That's the only thing. And we obviously seeing the collapse of the front. There were those 3 lines of defense erected. And again, because U.S. military and Pentagon primarily learned from the Hitler's troops and Nazis, who actually wrote the tactics and operational art for U.S. Army, like people like Manstein and Hauser, and they were thinking that, oh, okay, let's make those Festungs's, those fortresses out of the cities. And they thought, oh, okay, Russians will bypass, as they did during Operation Bagration. And then, for some reason, they thought that the Russians really want those deep operations. No, reality is that it's classic strategy of physical annihilation of the enemy. And while doing this, as Alexander Svechin stated, that taking territory is a necessary evil. So it's not about territory. It's about elimination of the physical threat. But while doing this, obviously, inevitably, Russia liberates those 4 regions, 4 oblasts, which are Russian Federation now, and it will continue until they are liberated. And then the talk starts what will be the actual size of the buffer zone. Russians are creating buffer zone. Many people do not understand. Russians are deep into Kharkov region, up to 40 kilometers now. They are deep into the Sumy region. These are the North Oblasts, which are officially Russian territory, but they will continue to do that. And so when people will decide to, many do actually accuse Russians about slow advance, they should stop watching Hollywood. Okay. So they should movie pattern is a fairy tale, okay? So it's but these are people who do not understand what they are dealing with. And yes, I spoke many times before that this is the type of the war which is a real war. And what can I say? We're gonna be going back to the square one. It is all about physical annihilation of the threat. And today, just merely tempo increases. And again, the main issue at this stage, what will be the size of the buffer zone? And I don't know. I can always...
Well, and I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that. You said earlier in this show that the objective of Russia had a political objective, not just a military one, and that is the elimination of what you called the Nazi regime, what certainly the Russians call that, which means not just Zelensky, but I guess that form of government. You can tell me how far you think that should go. But the question is, if Russia continues on with its military stuff, and let's say, by the spring or maybe summer, they have captured all the way up to the Dnieper River, maybe even taken Odessa in the south, or at least cut off the Dnipro from the Black Sea. But if the Ukraine side still doesn't capitulate, then what? Will Russia just say, okay, y'all can stop there, and we're just going to keep all this stuff and put up a buffer that's going to be like literally a fourth or a third of the country, or something else? What would Russia do if they don't get the political objective?
I mean, they'll physically annihilate whatever is left of their forces. Again, we have to keep in mind the critical point of any war is mobilizational potential or mobilization potential. It was Ukraine and the West which offered that famous thing. And then, of course, they blamed Russians as if Russians invented it. No, it was Western media and Western political figures who said, oh, they want to fight to the last Ukrainian. That's why Lavrov was reacting, and Zakharova reacted that we didn't say that, you said it, and then ascribe it to us. But if it comes down to it, then it will be to the last Ukrainian. People don't understand how serious it all is. Again, you have to bring even to the 11 verse to the General Staff and Command College and show them the numbers, real numbers of the losses. Those people never saw anything like this in their life. And so, when anybody thinks that, oh, it's a joke, well, the problem for Ukraine is that they already have enormous percentage of the, I mean, it's not majority, of course, but there's a very significant percentage of the volunteers or, soldiers of fortune fighting on their side, and they easily eliminated. So, and when you look attentively at the actually kill ratios, they are insane. As I already stated, on some sectors, it's 1 to 30 in favor of Russia. People do not understand what is happening. Why? It is the crime. It is the crime against humanity. It is the war crime by the combined West. They basically doomed the whole nation. And they are thinking now about actually drafting women. Well, Russians say, okay, if that's women, then we'll kill them too. Simple as that. You are the enemy. And you don't want to be the enemy of Russians in the combat. And so what is happening right now, Russians lost any kind of sensitivity to any kind of, humane, attitude towards, as Russians made the mistake with Germans in 1945. And today it returned to bite them with German tanks actually being in Kursk, like it was in 1943. So was it a mistake? The majority of Russian population today say, yes, we were too humane. We fed them, we restored them, and guess what we got in the return? And same Russians learn their lessons, they do.
Well, and let's I want to discuss something a little bit more further. You said in terms of what lessons can be learned in maybe a positive direction, at least the only thing that could be positive for the West, and that is they want to maintain relations with the United States. I don't know if you consider that from the Russian perspective, a necessary evil or something they just outright desired to have good relations with the United States. But you mentioned a minute ago the reports coming out of Russia today that Ukraine, apparently right after these meetings that they had with Trump and Zelensky, is that somebody fired drones onto Putin's residence in Novgorod, I believe it was, which you say was shot down. But I saw a quote attributed to Yushakov afterwards. It said there will be a retaliation on that. You said that Europe is no longer a player, but the United States is. And I think that there was an engagement or a statement made by Trump that implies that maybe he's interested in that same kind of thing also in this conversation with Zelensky. Watch this video right here.
Russia wants to see Ukraine succeed. Once it sounds a little strange, but I was explaining to the president, President Putin was very generous in his feeling toward Ukraine succeeding, including supplying energy, electricity, and other things at very low prices.
Man, I'm sorry, but those facial expressions.
Making it up. He's just downright making it up. Well, then again, listen, he also thinks that Russia lost 1 million soldiers, and he literally made it up. He pulled it out of his behind, and even this cretin, this drug addicted jerk, even he smiles. No, Ukraine is not going to be supplied with any energy until it's reduced to the agrarian country, and that's it. And again, many people do not understand how deep this treason goes. It also goes to the World War II, and especially the all kinds of the SS division like Galiciana and punitive detachment, which actually terrified even SS by their atrocities against the Russian, Belarusian, and Eastern, what would be called Eastern Ukrainian civilians. So the Russians never forgot it. I mean, Russians remember war. They know war really well. And so when Trump says something like this, it's like, really? But again, as I already stated, Russians got themselves casus belli today in terms of the increasing the tempo of the deindustrialization, which is happening tremendously, actually. And
but by the way, as right before this, according to what was happening, actually, according to the reports, Trump spoke with Putin before his meeting with Zelensky and subsequent to that meeting. So it seems like that Russia does have a pretty good relationship with Trump, apparently wants to have a good relationship, as you said. And I suspect, and I like your interpretation here, is that one other thing that Trump said I want to talk about implies to me that he is listening to Vladimir Putin and believing some of the things he's saying, especially about what could come later if no negotiation has come. Trump was specifically asked one question, what happens if this deal is not accepted?
President Trump, I know you've sounded an optimistic note here, but what happens in a few weeks if things sputter? What are you prepared to do?
They keep fighting, and they keep dying. No good. But if things don't happen, they keep fighting, and they keep dying. And we don't want that to happen. He doesn't want it to happen. President Putin doesn't want it to happen either.
Yeah, some of Zelensky's facial expressions during this peace conference or press conference were telling, I think, pretty interesting. Yeah. But I think Trump is right there. I mean, if a deal has not come, I mean, that's kind of what
he promised it many times.
The war's going to keep going.
Yeah, he promised it many times, but then again, he reinserts himself over and over again. He doesn't understand that for him and for the United States to have this gate to off-ramp, which is already there, Russians do. It's not like they want. They understand they need to talk to the United States. And then again, you will be surprised how Russian people, majority of Russian people, look at Americans. They do not hate them, unlike it is the case with Europeans. And so it's a lot to do with the Soviet times and American culture impact on also there's Russians and things of this nature. So there is a certain, and again, big time allies during World War II. Russians remember that. So, but the point is that he continues to reinsert himself, thus delaying this off-ramp. And the only thing he needs to do, which again, typical Trump, he did it small steps, undecisive, like he admitted in his press conference, the same press conference. He stated that, yeah, Russians not going to agree to the ceasefire. And I agree that Europe and Ukraine are impediment to the peace deal. Okay. So you said already A, go say B, C, D. Come on, man. Just Russians push you. You know what? Because again, as I already stated, Russians don't care about Europe anymore. They really don't care. They don't give a damn if they will have soup kitchens or whatever they will happen to them. They do care about America for a simple reason. This is the nuclear superpower. There is a responsibility on these superpowers like Russia and the United States not to freaking start the World War III, which is going to end up badly for everybody. And so that is totally different paradigm. And so Russians push Trump. Okay, here's the gate to the off-ramp. Open it. Say it. Finally say it from A to Z. You can stop it really fast. But no, he tries to play his internal American, political games. And each time he gets screwed, each time he has to come up and look ridiculous, like with this, Russians want Ukraine to succeed. Majority of Russians actually do not mind if Ukraine will disappear tomorrow, and they don't care. They have no sympathy to the nation which betrayed so much, and now commits acts of terrorism. Everybody knows that execution, atrocity against people in the Crocus City, hundreds killed, including children. And it was arranged by the SBU and GUR with the curation of the CIA and MI6. So everybody understands everything. They knew who were behind actually Chechen terrorism, during the First and Second Chechen War. Russians are not stupid. They actually have one of the best, if not the best, the human intelligence services, So when he said, like, Trump, go, take this path, open, here's the key. Open this gate and go off, and we will accept the fact that at least, United States, who was the main instigator of this whole atrocity which was happening for the last 12 years, at least we can talk. But each time he's like, stumbles, and then he repeats the same thing over and over again. Oh, let them fight. Okay, say so, get the hell out of the way. Just pull up or shut up, But no, he inserted himself into this thing for how many times? I don't remember. I lost the count. Each time he says, let them fight it out. And then literally a week later, he runs back inserts himself into this thing, not understanding. Each time he embarrasses himself, he embarrasses the country, because everybody understands now. It's not that the United States doesn't want to provide any more support for Ukraine. It's just that it cannot do this anymore. United States itself has been demilitarized. with this, basically sending everything United States got. The only thing the U.S. armed forces have now is the first line formations, such as the 1st Armored Division or whatever, the 4th, because they don't have anything more to give. It's not like the goodwill of Trump to stop something. It's just simply United States itself ran out of the resources. If Trump, should he had any more ability, he would continue to supply Ukraine with the volumes which existed before. It's just that United States doesn't have those anymore. And as the result, he continues to pretend that he matters. Even United States doesn't matter here. But that's what many people don't understand. But Russians will talk to the United States because it's completely different paradigm in terms of the relations. But you know what? He at least started some first steps from detaching himself from the European position.
Yeah. It's without question, it's a lot better than it was on the Biden administration, which it was almost lockstep in the insanity with the Europeans. But that part's gone, and we just have to hope that he'll finally get to the rational part to take that, like you said, from A to B to C to D and move on down the line. And then I guess Russia will finish the job that way. Although, it honestly, I think you're right. It doesn't matter what Europe does. It doesn't matter what Zelensky wants. It won't even matter what Trump agrees to. I think the end is already written, and the question is going to be how long is it going to take Russia to move to its objectives? How high of a price is it willing to pay? But I just can't imagine them under any circumstances stopping short of everything that they have said since June 2024.
Correct. And Vladimir Putin being arguably the greatest political mind and leader in the 21st century, he's not idiot, obviously. He's extremely smart guy. He understands the whole legacy of him, the whole gigantic political capital. No leader in the world has the support of that level as Vladimir Putin has. What many people do not understand, he understands it rests with the finishing of this threat to Russia and to Russian people, that he has said, okay, I'm done, I'm retiring. And he has already have been compared in scale to the figures of like Peter the Great, Catherine the Great, Stalin, so he's not going to screw up on this. He is too great of a factor in Russian culture and in Russian.
And just, if you can just be honest about it from our side of this, and I mean, you can even detach the cultural significance or anything else of his name for Russia. You can just look at the actions and the decisions that were made, and where I argue, you may disagree, I don't know. I think that Russia made a big, at least operational mistake in their initial invasion, and that they didn't have resources for plan B. But once they realized that Ukraine was not going to negotiate an end to this thing early on, like it looked like they were almost going to, they took the time that's necessary, a whole year, to go into the defensive. They started building up their industrial capacity. They started recruiting more people, training more people, getting large numbers of whole units that could rotate out and all this kind of stuff, making themselves virtually incapable of losing a war of attrition, whereas we still have not come to grips with reality, such that now we can't avoid loss, in my view. So it's a matter of how bad the loss is going to be. How do you see it?
No, I don't think it was operational mistake. What was happening, that the Russian army, which was entering Ukraine in 2022, it was still the peacetime army. But their industrial capability, it hasn't been brought up in 1 year. It started in earnest in 2013, the moment when many people do not understand how economically it all proceeded. So it was already prepositioned. It was just the matter of time, which took about 8 months to really fire up this steam engine. It's like you literally cannot build a factory which produces their composite materials and produces the enormous amount of those, technological solutions ranging from the long-range drones and things of this nature in 8 months. It was already there in Alabuga, those clusters. All those have been there since 2014, 2015, and it was being built because from the get-go in 2014, and that is a well-known fact, Russians knew that at some point of time, they will have to clash with the West big time.
But if your argument is that they actually started the preparation for that in 2014 and then just supercharged it once this war got kicked off, we haven't even gotten our 2014 moment in this side. Do you agree?
No. Yeah. I mean, no, listen, as I already stated, it's my position. I can defend it. I wrote 4 books, and I am writing the 5th one, at least working on it, together with a number of people who are really in the know, really high level, so in Russia. There are no Russian specialists. There are no Russian experts. I can tell you one thing. I wrote in the latest book I wrote about my book. Look at this Rebecca Koffler. Who knows, how she was from the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency. She was from Kazakhstan. She's a Russian Jew. And she said, oh, we knew many people in the Soviet time when I was a child, from those called the PO box, which was closed cities, which do, all kinds of research and things of this nature. And she gets into the Moscow State Pedagogical Institute and becomes the teacher of English. And then suddenly she immigrates to the United States, and she gets, after 9/11, to the Defense Intelligence Agency, and she writes the book about Putin plan and all this. My first question for all this was if that's she's on Fox News constantly, okay? If that's your level of expertise, anybody ask you, Rebecca Koffler, what kind of clearance she was carrying when she knows the secret plans and Russian strategy of defeating the West? She's basically an English teacher who became and she loves all those buzzwords. I briefed this and that. She won't understand the first thing about how the company operates and fights, let alone how. But yet here we are. These are the so-called experts. They are morons. They know nothing, but they are gladly accepted into all kinds of organizations like CIA, Pentagon, what have you, DIA, for a simple reason. They know how to suck up to those morons who recruit them. Because the only thing that their guys want to hear is how great they are, how incomparable they are, and how the finest fighting force in the world. And they suck it up. They go for the full flattery. Again, what is the first CIA undercover guy does when he gets to Moscow? He finds the most fringe, most hated, tiny minority of the liberals, and he goes there and he tries to extricate work with the information and recruit them. Guess what they give them? They give them everything they want to hear. How great they are, So, and by the time it happens, then suddenly they don't recognize that. Good Lord, this is not what we've been told. Well, go read Solzhenitsyn, for crying out loud. Our good friend, Mr. Douglas McGregor, with my deepest respect to this courageous and, man, I respect him profoundly. But we will never come together with the things about his understanding of the Great Patriotic War or Soviet period. Because he grew up among the guys, Germans, who basically spewed the Nazi propaganda in his ears. But reality is he doesn't even know the real numbers of what was happening in the World War II. I do. I had clearance. I had access. We all do. There is a Podolsk, the main archives of the Russian forces of Russian Federation. You can go out and look through this.
So what are the real numbers?
I mean, the number of the people in Soviet Union from 1922 through 1953, which is called, still large, but the number of people who went and have been imprisoned in Gulag, 3.6 million. Out of them, 860 have been executed throughout 32 years. And so out of those 800,000, including just regular criminals, actually, only 600 have been executed due to the political reasons, so-called political repressions. So where are those 60 millions? It's mathematics. It's simple as that. It's the same thing as U.S. Army, which Mr. Herrera in Military Review admits that basically U.S. Army, we know who wrote the history about all those losers from Wehrmacht who said, oh yeah, we were better than anybody else. Then how the hell it ended up that Russians ended up in Berlin if you were so good? Well, simple as that. They basically confabulate and essentially rewrote the whole history of the World War II. And they were officially employed by the U.S. Army Department of History.
Yeah.
Erich von Manstein, Hauser, bunch of other Nazi generals. They literally wrote the history and operational art book on the United States for the United States Army. Anybody, and then when in 1995, first edition of true American officers, Colonel David Glantz and Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan House, they wrote, when titles clashed, how the Red Army stopped Hitler, everybody would say, no, this is not it. Patton said he would be in Moscow, apart from the fact that obviously he said we fought the wrong enemy. People don't understand what they were dealing with. And actually, the kill ratio between Wehrmacht and all allies and Red Army was 1 to 1.3. Russians lost more men, especially in the first period of war. But then again, it was, and again, there are a number of operations which are, the scale of them isn't. Just to give you another example, many people do not understand that the Red Air Force ended World War II being largest operational tactical air force in history, much larger than the US Air Force. Many people still cannot grasp those numbers. They cannot understand what they're dealing with. And so, and that's why they love Solzhenitsyn. The only reason they love Solzhenitsyn sucks as a writer. Anybody who read him in Russian, it's just unreadable. But guess what? CIA compiled those things and say, oh yeah, 60 millions. Anybody try to learn the basic math, calculational math, that if it would have been 60 millions, I wouldn't be sitting here. Okay? I wouldn't exist. My parents wouldn't exist. They don't understand that population of the Soviet Union at that time was 155 million people. So can you imagine? But for some reason, Russians started to procreate and reached, the Soviet Union reached by the 1980s, something like 315 million. How this happened? What a magic trick, So that's what it is. We are talking about the complete collapse. When we talk about the collapse of the West, which is happening as we speak, we are talking about also this whole house of cards and lies and baloney, which has been propaganda, which have been perpetuated all over the combined West, and then suddenly the curtain is down, the house of cards collapses, and everybody sees this wall, and they don't understand what happened. Well, yeah, why?
Well, they're going to have to figure it out, because I think that a day of reckoning will come, whether anybody on the West wants it or not. Yeah. And we'll see what happens with that. But as always, we're very grateful for you coming on today. And
hey, Danny, we have some breaking news. Actually, Trump during a Q&A with Netanyahu announced that they have made their first strike near land at some loading docks in Venezuela. Let me play it for you here.
Well, it doesn't matter, but there was a major explosion in the dock area where they load the boats up with drugs. So we hit all the boats, and now we hit the area. It's the implementation area. That's where they implement, and that is no longer around. Is that the only strike that the U.S. has done? I don't want to comment.
President. Yeah, I don't want to comment. You just did. You just opened up the, and then you don't want to answer any more questions. Well, that's surprising. I hadn't seen anything about that. I think I'd heard that there was some claim of it. Actually, I was on another network earlier today, and they mentioned that was a rumor, but I hadn't seen any proof of that. But since we brought that topic up, I mean, you're a military expert, not just Russian. What do you make of the possibilities of us getting involved militarily in any capacity with Venezuela?
Oh, no, it's pretty high. It's pretty high. Plus, Trump needs some kind of, bada boom to parade himself as the military leader, and there is no doubt that at some point of time, United States Navy especially will start hurling whatever Tomahawks and JASSMs, at some targets in Venezuela. There are probably some special forces on the ground already, but I don't see any big time land force, being participant in all that. The only idea is, as traditional American modus operandi in the last decades, it's regime change. Okay, they will try to regime change. It will be a combination, obviously, of the operations of the special forces on the ground, and of course hurling whatever the United States Navy has, which it doesn't want to really hurl that much, because latest data, which obviously semi-official. I believe United States, as a general, is about down to 2,500 tomahawks of Block 4 and Block 5. People think that it's a lot. It's not. So it's rather, in the United States produces extremely slow rate of production of the tomahawks and JASSMs. So it could be expensive, but it will allow Trump to declare some kind of victory if he somehow manages to remove Maduro's regime. But that yet to be seen.
Yeah, we'll see if that actually succeeds or if it's another disastrous failure. But in any case, nothing good could come out of it, and I hope we don't even try it. But in any case, thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it. Be sure and look at Smoothie X12. I know a lot of people just can't get enough of you on our channel, so they don't have to. They can go to Smoothie X12 and get every day, I think, right? Pretty much every day you're sending out some new video, right?
Yep. My next video is coming up shortly.
Very good. Yeah, so there's a reason to go today later on. Thank you very much, and we will look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.